Hey, I wanted to do a video on reforming human behavior, the limits, the potentials, the ethics. So ultimately, we are malleable. This is a cornerstone of Buddhist beliefs and my personal beliefs. We can change ourselves with intention and mindfulness. We can change ourselves mindlessly and without intention. And we can be changed uh, externally by environmental pressures, evolution. Um, I personally accept these things as true, but I also recognize that there are limits to them. They're not absolutely true. Um, there's one thing that is fairly consistent with me is that I am not an extremist. I am emotional, but I am not extreme. I don't take extreme action. I don't take extreme viewpoints. I try to honestly look at the nuances of the situation, right? So I believe we can change the world. I believe we can change the weather. I believe that a human being can change their mind. And I also believe that there are limitations to all those things. And the question is not just power, but survivability. So ultimately, if you want to change the world, you do need to change people. All right, let me roll that back a second. All of reality is interconnected. So when you change one thing, you will effect something else. Now I'm saying will because I accept manifest destiny. I accept that things are not fatal. Things are semi fatal. Things are not certain. Things are semi certain. And understanding where you are and what's possible, I think, makes change more likely, or positive change more likely, or positive change in the time scale that you can imagine more likely and positive. In other words, in enough time. I'm trying to be as thorough as possible. So in enough time, you have no control and nothing matters. In a time scale that is not infinite, you can affect some change. But just as you understand that you, as a conscious, sentient being, can affect the world can in turn affect you, and then the interconnected nature of reality becomes apparent, and the intrinsic limitations of that woven fabric of life um, becomes apparent. So back to where we started, and that is modifying human behavior, reforming people. Can you change a human being? And the answer simply is yes. Yes. Women have this innate power to affect change through affection. They do. It's not something that they're naive of. They have exploited this fact for personal and social gain. I'm not going to say that the feminist movement has not benefited society. I think there was a turning point where it stopped benefiting society and started to exclusively benefit said women in the society. I think most men today would probably agree with that, at least in private. But I'm not going to say by any means that feminism didn't have a positive effect on society. But what women do is affect change through reward, basically. You're nice to men to get what you want. And if you don't get what you want, then you're not nice. And that is how women essentially rule the world. Right? I'm pro-life. I'll tell you, I do think maybe not, and this is just the way my mind works. If you can take a pill and prevent a cell from dividing, I think that's different than crushing a brain or something along those lines. But I do disapprove of abortion. Absolutely. And quite frankly, I have for my entire adult life. I don't like putting dogs to sleep. I don't want to kill the bird I found on the side of the road. I don't want to drown the mouse I caught in the mousetrap. I don't want to. And I certainly don't want to kill that baby. The fact of the matter is, women have made the killing of those babies a constitutional right. And they have only done that through sextortion or withholding love for political gain. That, I believe, is true. And the ethics of that are quite frankly acceptable. I hate to say it. It's acceptable to say, like, I don't want to have sex with you. I don't want to be nice to you, because your politics don't suit me. It may not be nice or cool or, romantic, but it's acceptable. Like, I don't feel like an unjust crime was done to me because a woman doesn't want to date me because I said I was pro-life. But I do think from a legal and rational perspective, the only reason that abortion is considered a right is because of sextortion. It's not because that's a rational argument. I don't believe that's a rational argument. And I'm not a Christian. I'm not even anointing a soul onto a fetus. I'm a little complicated as to what that is. I think genetics plays a role in it, but I think it's an evolving thing. I just think it's a sad thing, and it shouldn't be normalized. It shouldn't be mass produced, essentially, and it shouldn't certainly be taught as a right. It is a medical procedure that, quite frankly, should be like a private and terrible thing that is reserved for predicted miscarriages, for people who are terminally sick who get pregnant, for these types of situations that you can't fathom, and that a doctor and people behind closed doors could understand. But to say like it's a form of birth control, or that it's a right of a human being, is not rational. It's not a normal belief system to hold. It's definitely a tragedy that is not normal. But there's another way to manipulate human behavior, and that is with the application of suffering. And I think that the ethics behind putting the hurt on people is definitely darker than the ethics of withholding love. The ethics of withholding love is free will, and the ethics of putting the hurt on people is the ethics of war, and I think those ethics include fair warning. They include things like that's pretty much it. I mean, I'm not gonna say you can do anything to somebody ethically if you warn them. You can, but the escalation to submission can almost be unlimited. A fair warning is to say that the intention is to put hurt on. And the intention is to put hurt on in order to reform behavior. And the intention to reform behavior is justified. That's the ethics. That's the ethics. So, can you do anything at that point? No. I think that proportional escalation is necessary. So what a good analogy would be, like, you wouldn't consider the initiation of hostility to be ethical if it wasn't in response to a perceived threat. And the perceived threat is going to be the behavior of the person you want to put the hurt on. So, how to ethically put the hurt on someone? You need to articulate to them the behavior that you find threatening, right? This behavior to me represents a threat, and I'd like you to stop it. And at that point, you've given the adversary an opportunity to regress the behavior that you find threatening. And if they don't regress that behavior, what I consider to be ethical, this is a bit like biting your dog, okay? is you parody their behavior. And when you parody their behavior, they have a second opportunity to regress the behavior that you have found threatening, right? So you say, stop jumping over my fence and pissing in my pool. And the guy looks at you and jumps back over the fence and goes back in his house. Now, he doesn't have a pool, but he jumps over your fence again and he pisses in your pool again. So now you go over and you jump over his fence and you knock on his window and you piss on his porch. And he comes out screaming and yelling. Okay, now what you've done is just what I've described, except with real world analogies. So you told him, stop pissing in my pool. You gave him an opportunity to learn that you find this behavior threatening. Then when he did it again, after being told not to, that's when you parody the behavior, giving them an opportunity to learn, hey, this behavior maybe is unpleasant. That's why he told me to stop, right? Or they can, as I demonstrated in my analogy, escalate the behavior in an attempt to reassert their dominance in the light of the behavior that they were doing to you. So at this point, you are in a war, you are in a conflict, and the aggressor is now the person telling you not to piss on their porch, but he has escalated the situation. He has escalated the situation by raising his voice. He has escalated the situation by coming out and waving his arms, trying to make himself look bigger than he is. And you have then an opportunity to retreat or to escalate and parody, right? And every step of this process is based on near, medium, and long-term threat assessments. These threats may be internal or external. Hey, this guy could beat me up. Hey, I could get in a fight with this guy and I could end up going to jail. I could end up killing this guy. I'm actually much stronger than him. I could end up killing this guy. And I don't want to kill a guy over peeing in my pool. I don't consider that to be an ethical, disciplinary action. So I don't want to escalate it to that level. And you have to assess those situations and decide for yourself um, what level of intervention is required to achieve the objective of getting this piece of shit to stop pissing in my pool. In my mind, at that point, you've upset him. You've gotten the baby to cry. You he will he's connected the fact that urinating in someone's yard induces anger over here. So he's gonna stop maybe doing that to stop doing this, and maybe those things will connect in his brain. And if those two things that you connected by going over there and pissing on his porch, you got him angry by pissing on his porch, and so now he doesn't want to come back over and piss in your pool because he knows you'll come back and piss on his porch, and he doesn't want to get angry again. And so now he's made that connection between those two, that action and that emotion, and he doesn't want to induce that emotion, so he's going to prevent that action. And that's good. That's acceptable male to male behavior modification. You know, you don't necessarily need to increase the level of aggression to the point where you are arbitrarily dominating people. You need to escalate the level of aggression to the point where the behavior that you find threatening is no longer happening. And, you know, that's how behavior modification works for men, basically. You know, just two paths. So, you know, is it right or is it wrong? That's 100% based on the legitimacy of your threats and the discipline of your response. If you're facing illegitimate threats and you are undisciplined in your reaction to those perceived threats, you are a crazy person. If your threats are legitimate and you are disciplined in your reaction to those threats, you are not a crazy person. That's the difference between a crazy man and a soldier.